Coming up, the team attempt to shoot 3 national parks in a single day. We head out under the stars for some nighttime photography. We go in search of a new location in Dartmoor. And I'm off to Venice to compare 2 extremes of 35mm film cameras. Welcome to another AI-free show where everything's being created by real human beings, which is something of a novelty these days. We've got details of a great prize giveaway later on, so make sure you stick around for that. As always, we are starting with our photo challenge. Last time, we left the guys parked up on a very chilly night in Northumberland National Park, which wasn't the best news for Harry, who didn't have any bedding. We joined them on day 2 of their week-long challenge to shoot all 15 national parks for our 2025 calendar. That means that all the shots have to be good and they need to tick off more than 2 per day if they want to succeed. Once again, thank you to Accurist Watches who made the challenge possible, so show them some love by checking out their website, which has got a huge range of stylish men's and women's watches, perfect for a gift or to treat yourself. Okay, buckle up, because here we go.
Previously on the National Parks Challenge.
I have come up with a new challenge for you if you're up for it.
Challenge always sounds good.
Welcome to my camper van.
What's he doing here?
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
Be nice to each other.
Can't believe she's done this to us.
Do you not trust me or something?
You've got to get a bit of a shift on here though, because that...
Yeah, the mist is going. It was meant to be about reflections, but we've been a bit scuppered here. Well, that makes sense, because it's all downhill, so we'll probably save a bit of fuel, won't we? I've got some trees we can frame, bit of mist up in the background.
This is the challenge of trying to do so many parks in such a short time.
We've not got the time, really.
We'd arrived in Northumberland National Park in the dark, so hadn't had a chance to get a feel for the place. As Harry had thought Northumberland was famous for sausages, we decided to leave him in the motorhome to sleep in, as clearly he was going to be of no use here whatsoever. With the pressure on, James and I had to come up with the goods, so we decided to split up to give ourselves more chance of being in the right place at the right time. I found a location I was happy with, showing the wall snaking beautifully over the rolling hills towards the rising sun. While James was looking for alternatives, I set up the 4x5 camera to give this scene the attention it deserved. Welcome to Hadrian's Wall. As you can see, we've got pretty clear skies. Sun's going to be rising just to the right of those trees over there. When it does, obviously it's going to put some light on this side of the wall here, at least that's the hope. So I've set up a proper camera, 4x5 shooting film. I'm going to compose the wall coming in from the left-hand side, and then you can kind of see it snaking down. So for Northumberland National Park, this pretty much sells it.
Meanwhile, I had decided on a slightly different viewpoint on the other side of the wall and chose to use a longer lens, in this case a 70-200 on a proper camera. It was all looking rather sexy, but in conditions like these, it's difficult to go wrong. I'm sure Marcus will manage it somehow though.
So the sun's about 3 or 4 minutes away from poking up over the horizon. All set up 90mm lens, which is equivalent of about 35mm on a full frame camera. Film's loaded, filters in place, everything's done. I can just see the sun coming up now. So let's get ready for this. Dark slide is out. This is 1 second at f22. Hold your breath. Okay, so that's that one done. And then at the moment, the sun's right on the horizon, so it's not providing much luminance. So I'm going to wait for it to get up a bit, probably 5 minutes time, and then we'll get some more direct light on the foreground. And then I'm going to expose the other side of this film holder, and then that will be me. 2 shots for the morning, job done. So this was my second shot, with the sun now illuminating the foreground a little more. As I expected, I've picked up some lens flare on this one, noticeably here, as well as some obvious loss of contrast in the lower left corner. If we now go back to the original image, taken a few minutes earlier, you'll hopefully see the difference. I prefer this earlier shot, but let me know what you think in the comments.
So, with the day off to a good start, we walked back to the mobile HQ with a bounce in our step and an air of confidence about the whole trip in general. But there were worrying signs that after only a night or two, some of the team were starting to flag.
Bloody freezing. Not only do I not have any bedding, one of you numpties didn't put the heating on. Just be grateful I'm still alive. After that rude awakening, I had the satisfaction of scratching off the third of 15 parks on our scratch map of the UK. However, to stand any chance of succeeding in Ruth's challenge, we needed to get another 2 parks ticked off the list before this day was done. So there wasn't even time for breakfast before we had to hit the road and keep the wheels in motion.
Thankfully, it wasn't far to our next park, the Yorkshire Dales. Now, the UK may only be a relatively small island, but there are noticeable changes in the landscape, even when travelling short distances. We were now firmly in farming land and everything seemed to be out enjoying the spring sunshine. As nice as this was to be out in, it was proving a little tricky for landscape photography.
We hadn't got a plan as to what we were going to shoot in the Yorkshire Dales, but as luck would have it, we'd only just entered the park when we chanced across a potential subject, Pendragon Castle. The problem was that it was on the other side of a tall wall, at least tall for me, but I had a cunning plan. How'd you get down there?
What are you doing up there? There's a gate up there.
Is there?
Yes.
James was right. The gate was easier.
Great minds think alike, right? Both lining up that window and that second doorway down there.
Yeah, it's lovely.
But I thought particularly, I mean, you're kind of right here, it works from high up as well. But from low down, where I was here, look, you can see straight through and you can skyline.
Well, if I'd known about the gate, then I probably would have done that.
For a grab shot, this wasn't too bad, but we knew it wouldn't meet the high standards Ruth was expecting for her calendar. So, we had an emergency meeting in the mobile HQ.
Right, so this is done. Have you been here recently? Have you?
I have, yes. If my memory serves me correctly, we want to go to Swaledale because in this light, which is clear blue skies, sunshine, there's lots of stone walls, isolated barns and kind of like lone trees in fields. So high contrast. I think it will work quite well. You stand here, you get the wall as the base,
Yeah.
and 1, 2, 3. And I quite like this, the wall in front here.
Yeah. And you get that separation if we come this way just a little bit. Perfect.
Yeah.
There we go. And then possibly.
I'm wondering whether we should be up here to give us a bit more height, and then you get this wall in as well.
It's not often Marcus has a good idea, but this was one of those rare exceptions, so we made our way into the field to get a slightly higher viewpoint and to position the foreground wall more favourably. We were working against the clock, however, as the much-needed shadow on the left side of the barn was about to disappear, so we needed to get a move on.
I'll sort out the composition and let you check it.
What better way to speed things up than to take the shot on large format?
I'm not standing behind him like that, I'm not. But the good thing is, we've got a proper DSLR in the bag and we can get this shot done in about 1 minute.
Yeah, but it won't be as good. Okay, just need a cable release. Test it. It's good. Okay. Dark slide is out.
Oh, listen to that sound. Nothing quite like it, eh?
There's also nothing quite like the quality, with this scan being the equivalent of around a 400 megapixel file. It may be slow, but in my opinion, large format is well worth the effort.
If, however, you're in the other camp of people who might value convenience a little more, this is for you.
Right, ISO 100, give ourselves f8 around about 250 or 320th per second. There you are, done it.
I reckon for the middle of the day, harsh light, we've nailed that.
I reckon you're probably right there. Job done, I would say.
Yeah, good.
And so we prepared to head off to our third park of the day, but little did we know that the Yorkshire Dales hadn't finished with us yet. No sooner had we got back on the road before we passed an unmissable scene which was just begging to be photographed. A network of dry stone walls, isolated barns and lush green grass, all quintessentially Dalesy, stretched out like a patchwork quilt before us. Farmers went about their daily business, and lambs born only earlier that day were getting to grips with the ways of life, something James and Marcus have struggled with for the past 50 years. In fact, the scene was so good, we all got stuck in, a first for this trip. Even Marcus was spotted using a digital camera. I hope he washed his hands. Out of the 3 shots we came away from the Dales with, this was our firm favourite, as it captures the character of the park so well. So it was time to get my coin out again and scratch off another park. Next up was the North York Moors, only a short drive due east and somewhere Marcus and James had shot before. This was all going swimmingly well, to the point where we were even planning ahead. So we're here in the North York Moors. We've still got a couple of hours until sunset, which is good. We know vaguely what we're doing for sunset.
Yeah, that's all in hand for today.
Yeah, so let's sort out what we're doing tomorrow. We've got to get from here to the Lake District in the dark and then shoot something in the morning. So I don't really, I just drive through. I don't really know it very well.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
Not for a long time, so yeah, I'd have to say no at the moment.
I mean, I don't know it well enough to arrive in the dark and be somewhere first thing in the morning for sunrise, but I do know a guy who knows it incredibly well, and he's in my phone under L for legend.
Right.
So let's give him a call and see if he can help out.
Hello?
Chris, it's Marcus.
Hello Marcus, how are you, mate?
I'm good, thank you. Listen, I'm wondering if you can help us out. We're currently doing a kind of challenge which has been set by Ruth, and we've got to photograph all 15 national parks in the UK in 1 week. And we're doing pretty well at the moment. We're on day 2 and everything's going to plan, but we need to shoot the Lake District tomorrow morning.
Okay.
But we won't arrive there until after dark today. So we've got no chance to kind of recce it and know where to go. So I just thought I'd call the man with the knowledge, and if you can have a look at the weather forecast and just tell me where we should go for the morning, that would save us a lot of hassle.
So I think probably what you want to do is get yourself to Ullswater, and then in the morning, if it's still, then there'll be plenty of places you can find around the edge of Ullswater. But if it's not, get yourself up to the side of Gobarrow Fell. You want to head to an area called Yew Crag, and that gives you fantastic views over Ullswater. And if you haven't got reflections, it's not the end of the world.
All right, well, thanks for that, and I'll let you know how we get on tomorrow.
All right, mate, nice one, and look forward to seeing you soon.
With tomorrow morning meticulously planned out, all that was left to do today was bag our North York Moors National Park shot. Something which was all in hand. It was just a case of waiting for the ambient light levels to drop. So here we are in the North York Moors National Park.
Yep.
And this fishing village here is called Staithes. And it's something that James and I have shot before for Visit Britain a long time ago, but it was still here.
Back in the Dark Ages.
Yeah, but the village still existed back in those days. So this was a viewpoint that I knew would work, and I think it works really well at this time of day at dusk when you get the kind of artificial lights just starting to glow.
Yeah.
Still need to wait for it to get a little bit darker, but what do you think to the view?
Well, it looks fantastic. I mean, the back of the camera already is, let's say, a few minutes away from being
Yep.
perfect, but
Yep.
ideally I need a tilt shift lens. I've got my camera pointing down by quite a few degrees there, and I've got, it still looks all right, but you know, buildings just splaying out due to the convergence, so it's just, I can't cope with it.
So you don't have a tilt shift lens?
Not with me.
Rookie error.
I know.
So that's where this comes in handy.
Yeah, so I've never done anything with bellows and all the rest of it, so show me what on earth's going on here.
Yeah, so basically the camera is the tilt shift element, so you can put any lens on that and then move it with the front element.
Right.
So what I've done here is you can see that my camera is pointing straight ahead.
Yeah.
And then what I've done is I've lowered the lens, and so it's the same as pointing your camera down, but I'm still pointing straight ahead.
And you still get the same
so
field
all my
of view.
buildings, yeah, same field of view, but all my buildings are still upright.
Yeah.
So why don't you shoot on this camera, see how you get on. So ISO 100 film.
Yep.
So you put your ISO in there, and then what I want you to do is look through that window and choose the darkest area in the scene, which is probably down there on the bank, and just press that little button in there on the side.
Which one? That
one?
one
There, yeah. While you've got the circle over that. And then that's it, and then it'll tell you that it's f5.6 at 15 seconds, but that will come out as a mid-tone. We don't want it to come out as a mid-tone.
So it needs to be darker than that.
So if we go at the moment, you want to underexpose that by 2 stops, so f11 at 15 seconds would render that as almost a black. Now choose your brightest point, which is still at the sky at the moment. It might change when it gets a bit darker. So f22. So if we overexpose that by 2 stops, we're also at f11.
Yeah.
So f11 at 15 is the one is the exposure at the moment, but that's going to keep changing obviously as the light levels drop. This is the good part of photography when you're not in a hurry and you can just sit back and let the light come to you.
Yeah.
So I reckon the ambient light levels are matching the artificial light levels pretty good at the moment.
Yeah, it looks good on there.
Okay, so I've just redone the exposure. We're now at 30 seconds.
Right.
So if you're ready to take the shot, all you need to do is press that in for 30 seconds and you need to time it. So I'm going to pull this dark side out, so the film's now exposed to the, just keep that over there in case it goes in front of the lens, right? And then just press that at the same time you press your stopwatch.
Okay, 3, 2,
and hold it in.
1,
go.
So here's my shot on large format film. I'll show you the digital comparison in just a moment, but the positives here are the buildings are all vertical. Here's the digital version, with all the buildings at the edges of the frame now leaning. There's much less contrast than the film, but as a result, more details in the shadows.
And that's it, that's your first proper photo.
I'm a real photographer.
Well, I don't know about that.
It had been a long day, but we had successfully managed to get 3 calendar-worthy shots from 3 different national parks, all in a single day, meaning we were still on track to complete Ruth's challenge. However, we weren't quite finished yet, as we still had to drive across the country to the Lake District, ready for action first thing in the morning.
What a day.
What a day indeed, 2 days. He's done well driving, to be fair to him.
Yeah, well, we've done 3 national parks today, haven't we?
He's conked out, it's completely, he's gone, dead to the world.
He won't want anything to drink, will he?
No, he won't. I do, though. And Ruth, thank goodness, left me that, didn't she? Good girl, do the honours.
Oh, my favourite Rioja.
Boy, doesn't it look big in your hand suddenly?
Usually does.
So, after 2 very long days, we've managed to visit and photograph 5 of the 15 UK national parks, and we were all primed to shoot number 6, the Lake District at first light. For now, though, Harry and I just desperately needed some rest.
Next time on the National Parks Challenge.
Right at the perfect, get out of the way. Come on, where have you been?
Oh, that's looking good, isn't it?
Move.
And we've got storage everywhere. Wax strips and Viagra. I'll put them in my bag for now. This is tear and share. So look, there's tear and I'm shared. Let's go. Never mind.
Please, can you just stay in a hotel?
Phantom snorer.
thanks for that. Not really the image I want to be left with. Thank you to Accurist Watches for partnering with us to make the photo challenge possible. There is a link to their website in the usual place, so check that out, as you might be surprised how affordable their fantastic watches are. We'll be continuing to follow the antics of the guys' adventure on next month's show, when they'll be in the Lake District and the Peak District, desperately looking for calendar-worthy shots. And it's me who decides if they are good enough. Now, my standards are known to be pretty high, but I also have a reputation for being fair, so who knows if they'll succeed or not. Now, as well as our new monthly podcast, this show and our PO live show, we also produce an annual magazine, as well as a range of photo-related articles. It's got all the details and schedule for our photo holidays for 2024 and 2025. Our brand new edition is about to go to print and will be ready to ship in just a couple of weeks, and it's available to order now from our online shop for only £3.50. While you're in the shop, take a look at all the other items we sell, from ProSpec tripods, which you'll see our team using, to filters, lens cloths, tutorial books and lots more. We ship all over the world, so don't worry, even if you're in Atutaki, we can send stuff to you. Okay, so I hope you've got your notepads at the ready, because it's time for school with our monthly lesson in photography. We call this Essential Camera Skills, and last month saw Nick and myself flinging fire and light around in a darkened cave to get some amazing results, which was a lot of fun. This month Nick is staying in the dark, but torches are the last thing he wants in his shots. We've teamed up with Sigma to capture the best that the night sky has to offer.
If there's one genre of photography which has really benefited from modern digital technology, it is astro and aurora photography. Both are essentially moving subjects, but are only visible in extreme low light situations, so capturing enough light in a limited time has only really been practical in recent times. If you've never tried it before, but fancy giving it a go, then I'll arm you with all the information you need to get some great shots. I should warn you now though, this is not for the comfort photographer. You know the kind. They're the ones only ever seen outside on calm, sunny days. The truth is that to get great astro shots, you need to be prepared to go without sleep, be very patient, get very cold, and accept that everything is generally more difficult in the dark. If you're still with me, then let's get started. One of the most common questions we get asked about astrophotography is the gear that you need. We'll be discussing this on our next live show, so if you're interested in joining us for that, then press the join button to see all the details. What I'm going to cover here is the technique, as while gear is very important for astro and aurora, if you don't know what you're doing, even with the best gear in the world, you could go astronomically wrong. See what I did there? The first thing you'll need to do is check the weather forecast. You're really looking for clear skies and calm winds. If you can avoid sub-zero temperatures, this will make things easier too. Otherwise, you may get condensation and even ice building up on your lens, which is yet another thing you'll need to deal with. You should also check the moon phase, as ideally you want a new moon, or at least a few days either side of it. If you try to go out on a full moon or close to it, then this will severely diminish what you're able to capture from the sky. Basically, you want the moon below the horizon, which, even if you don't do any research at all, you still have a 50-50 chance of. Once you know there'll be a good chance of seeing the night sky, you need to set your camera up before you head out. Do this indoors, or at least in the car, where you have enough available light to see where all the buttons are on the camera. Doing this on location could increase the chances of doing something wrong or overlooking a critical setting. Ask me how I know. Regardless of which camera you have, set it to manual shooting mode. No other mode is going to work here, so if you don't usually use manual mode, now is the time to start. Make sure that your ISO is not set to auto. You're probably going to want something in the region of 1600 to 6400. But you won't know until you actually start taking photos, so set this to 3200 for now, as this will be a good starting point. Next, you need to switch your lens to manual focus. On my camera here, it's done via a switch on the lens itself, However, with your camera, it may be done via a switch on the body or an option in the menu. Either way, you need to know how this is done, as if you can't find it in the light, imagine how difficult it's going to be in the dark. Now go into your menu and turn off long exposure noise reduction. This may be called something slightly different in your camera, but nearly all cameras have it. If you leave this on, you're going to waste a lot of time between shots, and it doesn't really do much anyway. Next, set your white balance to auto and learn how to display the histogram on the rear screen, as you'll be needing this. Also, learn where the play and magnifying buttons are on your camera. It's amazing how many people don't know where these are once they can't see them. Finally, make sure you're shooting in RAW, you have a fully charged battery, and you have a memory card inserted with enough space on it. Lots of night sky photographers use red torches, as this provides enough illumination to see all the dials in your camera, but it doesn't cause the pupils in your eyes to contract too much. It doesn't then take as long to adjust back to full darkness. You might be thinking, you can use a head torch to see all of these things, and you would be right. However, if you're out shooting with other photographers, something I would highly recommend in the middle of the night, every time you turn on your head torch, you're going to ruin everyone else's shots. So try to get by in total darkness. Apart from anything else, it improves the experience of being under the night sky. Once your equipment is ready to go, the next thing to think about is a location. Ideally, you want to choose somewhere as far from any light pollution as possible. This means getting away from civilization and out into the countryside. You can research where the best places in your area are by going to lightpollutionmap.info. As you can see, where I am on the Isle of Skye is perfect. The next thing to consider is subject. Although the main subject is going to be the sky, without a secondary subject in the shot, you're going to end up with something very boring and without context. What you ideally want is a large subject which sticks up into the sky, well above the horizon, which works well in silhouette. A lone tree would be a good example, but here I am using this old abandoned church. Whatever you choose, make sure it's reasonably big, as you'll need to be quite far away from it. You'll see why in a minute. If you choose something small, it's going to be insignificant in the shot and won't work as intended. If you're shooting the aurora, then you need to be facing in a northerly direction, unless of course you live in the southern hemisphere. If you're shooting the Milky Way core, then you need to do your research to know in which direction it will be and at what time it will be at its highest in the sky. This will vary depending on where you are in the world. Equatorial regions and the southern hemisphere offer better views of the Milky Way, but you can still get impressive shots from further north. So, we've checked the weather, the moon phase, got our camera set up, our location sorted, and we've done our research. It's now time for the fun part. Set up your camera on a tripod, but try to avoid using your centre column, as this may allow the camera to wobble even in a slight breeze. Once you've done this, sort out your composition, including your focal length, which ideally wants to be quite wide. Sigma have loaned us their new 40mm f1.4 art lens, which is sure to become a go-to lens for astrophotography. It's currently not available for my camera, so they've also loaned us the FPL full-frame camera to use with it. It's sometimes helpful to shine a torch to see where things are in the frame. If you have one, visually set the distance scale on your lens to infinity. You'll need to fine-tune this in a moment, but getting it roughly right at this stage is enough. Now set your widest aperture on your lens. This could be anywhere from f4 to f1.4, depending on what lens you have. The lower the f number, the better. This will give you a shallow depth of field. As you'll be focused at infinity, this is why you cannot be too close to your foreground subject, as it will be out of focus. We already have the ISO set to 3200, so all that's left to do now is set the exposure time. Starting around 20 seconds is probably a sensible figure. Now take a test shot and check two things. the exposure and the composition. If the image is too dark, then go to 30 seconds or try a higher ISO setting. If it is too bright, then try a shorter exposure or a lower ISO setting. Check the composition to make sure the camera is level, you don't have any distracting elements creeping into frame, and that everything is sitting how you want it. Once you're happy with everything, we need to finally focus. This is more easily done on some cameras than others. I'll show you how to do it on this camera, but it may not work as easy on yours. Activate Live View on the rear screen and zoom in on the brightest star which appears fairly close to the centre of your frame. Just don't choose one close to the edge. If you can't see one in your frame, point your camera towards one in the sky and then recompose afterwards. Zoom in on the star using the magnify button. Make it as big as you can on the screen. Now twist the focus ring very gently and try to make the star as small as possible. You should find that it gets bigger either side of being sharp, so it's fairly easy to get it to its finest point. Once you are happy with this, zoom back out and make sure that you don't touch the focus ring or change the focal length if you're using a zoom lens. Basically, don't touch the lens from now. You now have everything set up. Your composition, your exposure and your focus. All you need to do now is take your photos. One thing which trips up a lot of people is that after being out in the dark for a period of time, your eyes will become super sensitive to light. This will have the effect of the camera screen looking a lot brighter than you are used to. So it's easy to assume your photos are correctly exposed, when actually they're way underexposed. This is why you need to use the histogram to make sure that your graph is not all bunched up on the left-hand side. It should be biased towards the left, as the scene is of the blackness of space, but try to ensure the stars are registering as close to white on the right-hand side of the histogram. Now all you need to do is enjoy being outside under 1 billion stars. Try not to think about the sleep you're losing, but more about the great photos you're hopefully capturing.
If you live in a city, you might never have seen a sky like that, but I highly recommend you make the effort to go to a truly dark location, just so you can witness the sheer number of stars in our night sky. And of course, if you can get a photo of it, all the better. Thanks to Sigma for loaning us their brand new 14mm f1.4 lens, which sets new standards for astro and aurora photography. If you're a Photography Online official supporter, then you'll be happy to hear that on the next PO live show, we're hoping to be joined by a Sigma bigwig who will be online to answer any of your lens questions. As Nick said, we'll also be discussing other useful gear you might need if you want to shoot the night sky. Plus, we'll be having fun with our photo detectives, where we look at photos which claim to be real, but we suspect otherwise. If that all sounds like fun and you're not one of our poos, that's a Photography Online official supporter, then why not join the growing crowd who help to support this channel? There's loads of benefits and it's only $3.99 per month, which is as affordable as we can make it without giving it away. Just press the join button or use the relevant link in the usual place. Okay, well, it is time for our special feature. This month, James is keen to show us one of his favourite secret spots in his home territory of Dartmoor.
Dartmoor, one of the UK's 15 national parks. It consists of around 365 square miles of moorland, woodland and lumps of granite, known locally here as its tors. It draws in photographers who come here to capture its sweeping views, abandoned buildings, wild ponies and much, much more. But today we're going to focus upon the water that this huge sponge of a place holds, and in particular a real little hidden gem, Venford Falls. These beautiful little falls I'm heading to today are not far from a footpath, indeed not far from the car park where you'd be beginning your journey. so they are accessible to most, but they can be tricky to find if you don't know exactly where to look. You need to cross this dam and then turn left past the waterworks. Follow the path, keeping the fence to your left. After a couple of 100 metres or so, stop and use a sense which you wouldn't usually associate with photography: your ears. In fact, listening can often lead to great locations. There are a couple of other locations here on Dartmoor I found over the years by using this very method, and I can guarantee you would not find them without stopping and listening for that water, that sound of water, that little hint of something interesting. So, carefully make your way down the bank on these slippy, mossy rocks, and you arrive at the top of the falls. Now the next job is to get ourselves right down to the bottom. Like most national parks, Dartmoor has its iconic subjects and photographic locations, but it also has an abundance of hidden gems, such as here at Ilford Falls. It's exploring for these which I find far more interesting than turning up at the usual honeypot locations and getting the same shot as everyone else. I've been here numerous times and have yet to find another person present. This really is a little gem of a place. Once down here, it feels like you're in your own little secret mossy grotto. Photographically, it's not exactly the mighty Vic Falls, but small, as you can see here, can actually be rather beautiful. Just ask little old Harry. But enough about my inferior-sized, but significantly younger and handsomer colleague. Let's get on with the task at hand, capturing these beautifully secluded waterfalls. So, now that we have found our way down to this location, how do we go about photographing it? Well, the first thing to note is that it's winter, so the trees are without leaves, thus showing lots of sky. This, in combination with the fact we're tucked away deep in the gully, in the shadows as it were, means we may have exposure issues. But rather than get bogged down with potential technical difficulties, I'm going to have a wander, a scramble about, and to see what vantage points work. I'm also going to consult my very learned friend and colleague Nick, who is behind this very camera today, because I've been here many times before, but this is Nick's first time, and it's always good to get a fresh set of eyes and their opinions on any location. Right, so what have you found,
Well, I like the flow of the water here.
that fresh set of eyes?
Yeah, so getting down low really brings the rapids into the foreground, but obviously the big log coming down cuts the waterfall in half. I mean, there's nice little rapids up here, but again, we're still this side of the log.
Yeah.
So we probably need to be the other side of the log and see if we can find something in the foreground. You don't just want the waterfalls on the road.
And interestingly, that log that cuts it, it cuts it in half, but also it's really picking up the light today. It's coming through these wintry trees.
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe that's a spring shot, but for now, let's make our way past, shall we?
As with all photography, it's deciding what not to include, which is just as important as deciding what to include within our frame.
So we managed to get this branch out of the shot, which is the key to it, isn't it, really, here? It's a bit of a shame, but it's nature, right?
Yeah, but we've got this other log here, and it's wet, so it's dark, it's not catching the light in the same way.
Yeah.
And I'm able to use it coming in from the bottom right hand of the frame, as you'll see here. And also this bit here actually comes in from the bottom left, so you actually get this V coming in.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Points to, and also the natural line of the rock that also follows the line of the log.
Yeah, it's interesting because most people shoot from the other side here, just square onto the falls, but that's not always necessarily the right thing to do, and clearly not on a day like today.
Yeah, and you've also got the water flowing sort of to the bottom left-hand corner as well. No sky in the shots because it would just, it looked unsightly. So and I've managed to get an exposure time of 1/4 of a second. So you can see there's just a nice amount of flow there.
We get a nice, that's perfect.
It's not too smooth, there's still texture in there.
Yeah.
Both Nick and myself preferred a low viewpoint and a wide-angle lens at this particular viewpoint, as we felt it added to the drama to suit the situation. As for exposure time, we chose something around 1/4 of a second, as this provided just enough movement to the water to add interest.
Speaking of adding interest, my so-called faithful dog has of course fallen in love with Nick and is over there behind the camera with him. But it's time for her to earn some dog biscuits, as I have a shot in mind and she is required. Basically, it involves moving water and a still dog. Well, I have at least one of those present and easily controllable. The premise is similar to the previous shot, but this time with a little more attention on a principal piece of subject matter, the dog. So I've recomposed a little bit, but everything else is much the same, particularly the shutter speed. Still 1/4 of a second, so lots of movement in the water, and thanks to the perfectly still modelling of little Miss Foxy Dog, we end up with a lovely portrait in a beautiful location.
We want to achieve 3 key things with every show: to inspire people to take more photos or to start taking photos, to pass on the necessary skills to enable everyone to get great results and enjoy success in what they do, and finally, and most importantly, for everyone to have fun along the way. We run photo trips all over the world, and we realise as well as anyone that the enjoyment of the process is the main reason why people pick up a camera. Hopefully this comes across by watching our show. Dartmoor is just one of the UK locations where we offer regular workshops. Others include Glencoe, Skye, Harris and Lewis, St Kilda and Shetland, and Harry has been working on an exciting new winter photo holiday in Assynt in the Scottish Highlands, which will be a new addition to our 2025 calendar. We also have a couple of places available on our upcoming Ireland trip in May, so if you want to find out more details and maybe join us, visit our website or order a copy of our magazine. Okay, well, hopefully by now you're getting used to the format of this show. We start with a photo challenge, then give you some essential camera skills before unleashing our special feature. We then end each show with analogue affairs. Film photography is more popular now than it has been for a generation, but if you've never tried it, then this next feature is for you. We've also got a great prize to give away, so whatever you do, don't turn off now. Usually, analogue affairs is Marcus's territory, but I guess he must have been in a generous mood, as this month he's asked me to take over the role.
Wait, tell me what to do.
If you want to get into film photography, then 35mm is by far the most popular of all the film formats. According to Ilford, 35mm film accounts for 3/4 of all sales, no doubt due to its convenience over large format and cost per photo over medium format. Obviously, 35mm can't rival the quality of medium format film, but it's not always about the quality, it's about the experience. To help me appreciate this, Marcus recently sent me on an assignment to Venice, so naturally I was keen to oblige.
What I would like you to do is go away for a couple of days with a couple of film cameras, this being one of them. I want you to compare the user experience. Now, don't be grabbing this one. This is my first ever camera.
Yes, I remember it.
I got this for my 18th birthday, this very camera. And last time you had it, you broke it. There, look.
Yeah, all right, you're not going to let me forget that, are
No,
you?
so you're not allowed to touch this one. So what I've done is I've got an exact copy, two identical cameras,
Okay.
but you can have this one with a strap on it.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I have no sentimental connection to this camera, so if you drop it, it's not the end of the world. Now, this camera here costs £30 off of eBay.
Okay.
And it's in excellent condition, good working order. That's obviously at the budget end of the spectrum of 35mm cameras, good cameras.
Okay, £30.
Yeah. So we'll put that back up there. Now I want you to compare that with something at the other end of the scale, and I'm going to give you the holy grail of 35mm cameras, a Leica M6.
Wow.
£30?
Yes.
About £3,000. This is for the body only.
Right, okay. Do you trust me with this?
Yep. Oh yeah.
Jeez, don't do things like that.
So this is a rangefinder.
Okay.
So you're not looking through the lens. This is an SLR, so when you're focusing, you're looking through the lens. That's the main difference between the two. They've both got 35mm lenses on. This one is f2, that's f2.8, but apart from that, you should get pretty much identical photos from each one. So go away for a few days, use them both, shoot a couple of rolls of film through them, and just see how you get on.
I can do that for you. So, armed with both cameras, I flew to Italy, where I plan to spend a few days getting to know and hopefully enjoying shooting some film with both these cameras. Who knows, I might even have time for a pizza and a tiramisu. Once in my hotel room, I set about loading both cameras with some film. Remember, I am here to compare the user experience of these two extremes of camera rather than the quality, although I am keen to see what difference there is with this too. First up was the Minolta, which seemed fairly straightforward and is similar to others I've used in the past, so it felt fairly familiar. The Minolta also has a slot to place a reminder as to what film you've loaded, something I always find useful. Next up was the Leica, which loads from the base of the camera. I was expecting this to be trickier, but was relieved to find that it wasn't actually that fiddly at all. The Leica has no film reminder tab, so it would be easy to forget whether you had colour or black and white film loaded if you hadn't used it in a while. Both cameras are a similar weight and size, and I love the feel of them. They're probably too big to fit into a pocket, but they easily fit into a small shoulder bag such as this one, which is my favourite bag I own. Shoulder bags are ideal for walking around a city, which is just as well, as that's exactly what I'm about to do. If you've never been to Venice, then it really is a photographer's dream, with potential shots to be had everywhere you look. I'm choosing to work without a tripod and just want to capture spontaneous shots as and when they present themselves, which, let's face it, is what street photography is all about. So to make the comparison as even as possible, I've chosen to use the same film in both of these cameras. Now I've chosen the Ilford HP5, which is ISO 400, which means I can shoot handheld and in low light conditions. Plus, I love the look of black and white for street shots. I didn't have to walk too far to find the first scene which caught my eye, a line of moored gondolas on the Grand Canal. This would be my first time to compare how each camera focused. The Leica has a single split focusing square in the centre of the viewfinder, which aligns two ghost images when in focus. I found this easy to work with, especially if you have vertical lines, such as the poles in this scene here. The Minolta also has a split focusing area in the centre of the frame, but has a matte area around this, which can be useful when focusing on textured subjects. Before moving on, I turned round to see a couple of people walking towards me, so framed them up on the Leica. I have to say, trying to manually focus on a moving subject is new to me, and I think I might need some more practice. Now a similar shot on the Minolta. Even though I can focus through the lens, it doesn't have any advantages on a moving subject like this. Both cameras have built-in light meters, but I found the Minolta one easier to use. It shows every exposure time down the right-hand side of the viewfinder and indicates which one it suggests is correct. It also shows you the one you've selected, meaning you can see how many stops over or under you are from the camera's suggested exposure. The Leica is far more basic, with just a couple of arrows indicating whether the camera suggests increasing or reducing the exposure from that which is currently set. Both cameras have interchangeable lenses, but to keep things simple, I only have a 35mm prime lens attached to each one. The Leica one is a far superior lens, but the Minolta one is great too. Basically, both are capable of giving some top-class results. Both cameras have the same exposure range, from 1 second up to 1/1000th of a second, plus a bulb setting too. I have to say a big thanks to the cameraman and the sound guy who failed to warn me about the incoming wave which engulfed my feet while I was busy framing that last shot of the lamppost. I had to spend the rest of the day walking around in soggy shoes, but at least that meant not having to worry about the high tide. the Minolta has a couple of features which the Leica does not. First, it has an aperture priority mode, allowing the user to set the aperture on the lens barrel and the camera then selects what it thinks is the best exposure time. It also has an exposure lock feature for use when using this mode. The other feature it has is a self-timer, in this case 10 seconds. Both cameras take batteries, but the Leica will still fire at all speeds without batteries, as power is only needed for the exposure meter. The Minolta won't fire at all without batteries, so this is a definite advantage for the Leica. So having been going around the city for a full morning now, I've used about half a film on both of these cameras. Really interesting to have the two going on at once. The Leica, which I've got now, feels so good in the hand, really good quality. And actually, I was a bit worried about using this as it's a rangefinder. I've never used one before for focusing. A lot easier than I expected, nice and clear to do that actually. The Minolta, being an old school SLR, feels nice and familiar, really easy to frame things up. Light meter as well, dead easy to use, so very much enjoying using them. Both cameras feel well made, but there is no denying that the Leica feels the more solid of the two. The Leica is also the quieter of the two cameras, as obviously it has no mirror to move prior to the shutter opening. However, I have to say that I prefer the more obvious clunk of the Minolta, as it feels like something significant has happened when you press the button. Sometimes when using the Leica in a noisy environment, it was difficult to know if it had taken a shot or not. One thing that was noticeable when it came to developing the film was the spacing of the frames. The Minolta wasn't as consistent as the Leica, and there were even 2 or 3 frames which slightly overlapped. The Leica was far more reliable in this regard. I have to say I enjoyed using both cameras and I would be happy with either of them. As I was hand holding all the shots, there's no point in trying to look at the sharpness of them side by side, but that wasn't what this exercise was about. One of the most important yet overlooked areas of photography is the enjoyment that it brings. Many of us consider the final image to be the product, but surely it's the process which is really the product. The final image is just a bonus if it turns out okay. This is where these cameras really excel. Being film, there's no reviewing the image at the time to see if the composition, focus or exposure is correct. You have to have faith, and this adds to the enjoyment of the process. I also found that I took far fewer photos than I would have done on digital, but this is a good thing, as it means I only had a few dozen shots to edit rather than a few thousand, which would be more typical if shooting digitally for a few days. So which one would I choose? Well, it really depends who's paying. If I'm spending my own money, then I probably wouldn't be able to justify the 100 times price tag of the Leica. However, if someone were to buy me one, and it is my birthday coming up, again, just saying, then of course I would prefer the Leica, as it is the better camera and will probably last for longer, as well as potentially increasing in value. Not to mention the boost to my street cred, not that I need it. The main takeaway lesson here, however, is that if you've never tried film photography before but fancy giving it a go, it doesn't need to cost the world. But if you have the world, then there are ways to spend it. And of course there are 100 other options between the two cameras that I used in Venice, such as Canons, Nikons, Contax, Pentax, the list just goes on. And whatever you choose, enjoyment is almost guaranteed, so why not give it a go? And if I've managed to whet your appetite, then I have some good news. We have decided to give away one of the cameras. Can you guess which one? Yes, it is the Minolta X300, which is a great camera. We'll also include a 50mm f1.7 lens, and Ilford have also thrown in a few rolls of their HP5 film, which I used for all the shots in that feature, as well as this starter kit for developing your own black and white film at home. It's a great prize and it'll provide the perfect introduction to film photography if you've never tried it before. To be in with the chance of winning it, all you need to do is join me on our next PO live show, where we'll be spinning our infamous Wheel of Fortune here to choose the lucky winner. It's yet another reason to become one of our POs, as you'll get over double the amount of content and more chances to win great prizes. Simply press the join button, and for only the price of a drink every month, you'll get to join the best photography community in the world. Well, that almost brings us to the end of another show, but before I go, I want to remind you that you can listen to our new Photography Online podcast. On this month's episode, among many other things, we share a few horror stories from people who've been on dodgy photo workshops and ask the question, should the photo workshop industry be regulated? It's available now from all the major podcast platforms. Just search for photography online and look for this logo. If you like our show, don't keep it to yourself. Please spread the word by telling your friends or anyone you know who might also enjoy it. We will be back next month when we'll be continuing to follow the team on their National Parks Challenge. Plus, we'll be showing you what impact different focal lengths have on portrait subjects. We'll be on a photo tour around Snowdonia and we look at how to master exposure metering, so make sure you join us for that. Until then, take good care, but most of all, take good photos.